We're going to move back on now to discussing background knowledge, very much along the lines of what we discussed in some of the other videos. And I'm going to draw upon initially some of the important work that John Bransford, and in this case with his colleague Johnson, did, that appeared in a journal that included a lot of these early studies, the Journal of Verbal Learning Behaviour. There are now journals called Cognition and so on, but at this point in time, a lot of the early work here appeared in that journal. And interestingly, you can sort of see the date of this, even though, as I said, Howard Gardner designated 55 as sort of the start date of the cognitive revolution. For most of us in education, and certainly in reading, the turn really didn't begin to take place until the work of people like John Bransford began to be make the impressions that they did on people. And so again, it wasn't until really the 70s that we saw the cognitives turn really take hold in terms of reading research. In this article, John presents a couple of experiments, a couple of investigations, again, John with his colleague Johnson. And I'm going to read you a passage that he used in one of the experiments, and indeed John presented this in having participants listen to it. At this point in time, if you're a university student and the expectation for you, particularly if you're in psychology, but oftentimes in most fields, was that you were to, in a sense, volunteer to participate in research like this. And so a lot of the early research was done with college-age students. And again, it was oftentimes done in a fashion very much like this, where John would have been presenting this, or the researchers would have been presenting this to a large group of students who would have been following along with listening to it. But then they would have been presented, as you'll be presented, different information. And these experiments were used to demonstrate some of the key findings coming out of, in the early stages of cognition. So let me read it to you and get you to try to understand what's going on. If the balloons popped, the sound wouldn't be able to carry, since everything would be too far away from the correct floor. A closed window would also prevent the sound from carrying, since most buildings tend to be well insulated. Since the whole operation depends upon a steady flow of electricity, a break in the middle of the wire would also cause problems. Of course, the fellow could shout out, but the human voice is not loud enough to carry that far. An additional problem is that a string could break on the instrument. Then there could be no accompaniment to the message. It is clear that the best situation would involve less distance. Then there would be fewer potential problems. With face-to-face contact, the least number of things could go wrong. That was the passage that he presented. And what he found was those persons who were just presented that passage as rawly as I presented it to you had quite a bit of difficulty making sense of it, and also didn't do a very good job of recalling much of it when they were asked to do that. And John compared those people with people who had other experiences with the listing of that passage. And let me present you one of those other experiences.